Hey everybody, we're going to be taking our notes on meiosis, so please make sure you're on page 2 in your packets. So I want you guys to review. I know it says partners up here, however, we're going to do this individually since it's a recorded lecture. I want you guys to go ahead and read through these questions, hit pause for a minute, and try to answer them to the best you can. All right, so what does your body use for mitosis? We talked about several of these things before. We were focusing on healing wounds and growing. We want our cells to make exact copies of themselves as we grow up, if we get a cut, we want to make sure all that information is the same. Now, when we were going through mitosis, we started off with one original cell. From there, we made 2 daughter cells. Now, each of those new cells, we want to figure out how much DNA or how many chromosomes they have. Well, it's going to be the same as the original. So if we think back to mitosis, if I started off on this side, if I had 10 chromosomes, and I made 2 cells from that, each of those would then have 10. Okay, if you need to write that down in your notes as a quick reminder, that's fine too. Now, meiosis, we started talking about this yesterday. Meiosis is, instead of making body cells, we are going to be creating sex cells. Those are our sperm and egg cells. At the end of meiosis, we talked about this yesterday, we are going to be making 4 new cells. And again, since they're sex cells, instead of having the same as the original, we're going to have half of the amount. So again, if I have 10, we're going to go through 2 divisions. So we're going to have 10 and then 10. And then once we divide again, each of those cells will have half of the amount as our original. Okay, and our original was 10. Again, we talked about this yesterday, so if you're a little unsure, make sure you go ahead and look at that vocab page on page 1 as a reminder. Now, here we are talking about our homologous chromosomes, and we talked about those yesterday. If you remember, we talked about the prefix of homo. Homo means same. Now, with homologous chromosomes, we know that they're a matching pair of chromosomes. We have one from mom, one from dad. So if we look at the picture here, here's our one from mom, here's our one from dad. Now, we also talked about how homologous chromosomes, we call them homies. Okay, because our homies are our friends and we're not identical to them, but we do like similar things. Now, with homologous chromosomes, the words same and similar, we need to make sure that we're paying attention to what that means. Homologous chromosomes do code, for the same size, or they are the same size, they are the same shape, and they have the same traits. Now, this means that they are coding for the same traits. Oops, sorry, that's what say coding. Coding for the same traits. So that means that those same traits, they're going to be focusing on hair color, eye color, nose size, skin color. They might not be the same. Mom might have blonde hair, dad might have brown hair, but they are still coding for the same traits. So that's where we're getting this same with homologous. Now, they again are not identical. The sister chromatids that we talked about are identical. Homologous chromosomes are similar, not identical. Okay, again, this is where we get that homies. All right, they are similar but not identical. You and your friends, similar but not identical. So when we look at our body, we have 46 chromosomes as we see here. Again, they are the same size, they are the same shape, and they are coding for the same information. The only ones that are a little bit different, if we look here or down here, and these are sex chromosomes. We'll get more into that when we talk about genetics. So if we take a look at this picture here, we want to point to 2 sister chromatids and point to a pair of homologous chromosomes. I'm actually going to change it so that we're circling and pointing. So we're pointing to our sister chromatids, which we see here, and instead of point to a pair of homologous, we're going to circle the homologous. So again, we have our sisters, either the 2 blue ones, or we can even point to our 2 pink ones down here. These are sister chromatids. Now, the 4 of them together, so the 4 sisters, These are our homologous pairs. These are our homies. Again, if you want to label that in your notes, you can write out homies or you can write out homologous chromosomes, whatever floats your boat. And then you can write sisters down here, so sister chromatids. Now, we talked about diploid and we also talked about haploid yesterday. Now we're just kind of going into a little bit more detail. Yesterday we said diploid, that prefix di meant 2. So diploid means the cell is going to contain the normal amount of chromosomes. And in each human diploid cell, we have 46 chromosomes. Again, we're focusing on human diploid cells because, again, all organisms have different amounts of chromosomes. Now, in our body, we can find tons of cells that are considered diploid. It's going to be all of our body cells except for sex cells. So body cells can mean muscle cells, it can mean brain cells, it can mean skin cells, basically every single cell in your body except sex cells. Now, when we talk about diploid meaning 2, we are going to be pulling in a little bit of math here. So we're going to be kind of multiplying and dividing. So when we see this term 2n, 2n, we're going to write it over on the side of the paper, 2n equals diploid. Please make sure you write this down because this is going to help you with your homework later. So if I see 2n equals 46, we are going to be talking about a diploid number. So 2n means diploid, so we're going to write that again, just as a good reminder for ourselves. Now, the number 46, this is actually representing the amount of chromosomes or the number of chromosomes. This isn't hashtag, this is the number of chromosomes. So if I come over to the side over here and I see 2n equals 92, how many chromosomes am I going to have present in this particular organism? If you said 92, you would be correct. We would have 92 chromosomes in that particular organism. Another example, if I had 2n equals 12, I would have 12 chromosomes in that particular organism. So again, 2n is just another term for diploid. Haploid, like we said yesterday, haploid, underlining the HA, haploid means half. So it is half of the set or the half of the normal amount of chromosomes in that particular organism. So if we were to look at human haploid cells, again, diploid was 46, so human haploid is half that, would be 23. In the human body, sex cells, so sperm and egg, are haploid. And again, this is only sex cells. So again, we are dealing with a couple math variables here. If we see the letter N, N equals haploid. I'm going to write it over here, writing multiple times. Haploid, haploid, N equals haploid, N equals haploid down here. 23 is going to, again, represent the number of chromosomes. So if I take a look on the side, I have N equals 4. I need to figure out what N means. Look at, I have N and so many N's. This is going to mean that it is haploid. If I had N equals 5, this would mean that it is haploid. I have 5 chromosomes within that cell. So if we take a look at our example, the human chromosome number. Human chromosomes, if I have a diploid cell, 2n is going to be 46. Now, you can think about what the half of that is, but if you wanted to do math, you can do some math too. So if I had 2n equals 46, I divide by 2, divide by 2, n equals 23. So that's where I get my haploid. It's half of the information. Now, if I gave you another example, so if my organism equals n, we'll say n equals 12. okay? I want to figure out how much my diploid is. You can just plug that into the equation. 2n equals question mark. We have 2 times 12 because we know what n is. And that equals 24. Okay, and that would be my diploid of 2n. Okay, we're going to do more practice on this a little bit later. So if you're still having trouble, that's okay. But please make sure that you guys have good notes written for haploid diploid information. Now, some of these terms we already talked about yesterday, but repetition is a great thing. A gamete, remember that fancy scientific word? It is for an egg cell or a sperm cell. Again, only sex cells. And because it's a sex cell of an egg or sperm, these are going to be considered haploid. Again, they are haploid because you need them to combine with one another. If you want to shorten this, why are they haploid? Shorten this if you must. You get half from mom, you get half from dad. Okay, that is why they are half, because they need to combine with one another. Fertilization is when these two things combine, when a sperm cell meets an egg cell. All right. Again, you don't need to write this whole thing here. You can just put sperm and egg combine. Okay, sperm and egg combine. A zygote is what is created. So a zygote is a fertilized egg. So fertilization, I want you guys to put on the side. Fertilization is a process. The zygote is the actual cell, all right, a fertilized cell. Now, is a fertilized cell, is that going to be diploid or haploid? It is going to be diploid because, again, it is a sperm plus an egg, okay? So that's 23 plus 23 gives us 46, okay? Total amount, which is our diploid number. So far, again, we're not going to do this with partners. You guys are going to fill this out as we go through. I want you guys to pause for a second and think about what processes and what we've created, and see if you guys can fill this out. Once you're done, go ahead and hit play to check your answers. So, mom and dad we have are going through a process to create an egg cell and a sperm cell. What we're looking for number one is the process, and that process is going to be meiosis. Now, once we have an egg cell and a sperm cell and they start to join up, that process is fertilization. When fertilization occurs, again, egg cell plus sperm cell equals, and that is going to be our zygote. Now, once that zygote is created, again, egg cell and sperm cell, so we have, I want you to also write down, we have 23, and then this is 46 chromosomes. Once our zygote is created, our body starts to go through mitosis to make exact copies. And then we are created. So once we start getting into a little bit more of the phases of meiosis, before meiosis can even happen, just like mitosis, something needs to happen in interphase with our genetic information. And that is going to be, it needs to make a copy. Again, it says to make sister chromatids. Don't worry about writing that. Just make sure you focus on DNA must copy. That is very important. It happens in interphase in meiosis and interphase in mitosis. Now, we talked earlier that meiosis has 2 divisions, and each of those divisions has a name. They're very complicated. Get ready. The first is meiosis 1. The second, meiosis 2. So we are going to be going through these 2 phases. Before we go through those, I just want to do a quick reminder of the word tetrad. We talked yesterday that tetrad was like Tetris. And if we notice, each one of these little blocks, or each one of these little figures, has 4 blocks to it. So the word tetrad means 4, and that's where Tetris got its name. A tetrad is the same thing as a homologous pair. So we have a pair from dad and a pair from mom, our 2 X's. So again, they are similar, but they're a little bit different. So it's called a tetrad because a homologous pair has 4 sister chromatids. Here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and again, Tetris because they have these 4 blocks in each one of those shapes. Now, when we look at meiosis, there are some key points, 4 main key points essentially. First, it's going to be taking place in 2 different spots. If you are a female, it's going to be taking place in the ovaries because we are creating an egg cell. In males, it will happen in the testes because, again, we are creating a sperm cell. We are going to start off with 1 cell, and it's going to divide 2 times. And at the end, we will form 4 cells. Now, we are going to be going through all those same phases as mitosis. However, we are only going to have interphase happening 1 time. Okay, I want you to highlight this, circle it, whatever you need to do. So in interphase, we said that our DNA copies. Our DNA is only going to copy 1 time. All other phases will happen 2 times. And one of the last key points is happening in prophase, and that's crossing over. We talked about that yesterday, where our homologous pairs are sharing information. So part of the red one jumps over to the blue, part of the blue jumps over to the red. Remember yesterday I said it was they were switching shoes. The shoes are coding for the same thing. They're both shoes, but they are a little bit different. Okay. When we exchange that material, it's allowing each of those sex cells that we are creating to be genetically unique. Or we can also say, instead of unique, we can say genetically different. Now, when we look at meiosis 1, we are dealing with our homologous chromosomes, our homies. Yay, homies. Okay, our friends, we're hanging out with them in meiosis. So we start over in meiosis, we have interphase. Our cells are going through DNA replication. Okay, I want you guys to highlight that. In prophase, this is prophase 1 because we are in meiosis 1. A big thing to notice, I have 1 cell here, 1 cell, 1, 1, 1. So this is how I know I'm in meiosis 1 because I have 1 cell. So the same thing happens here. In prophase, our chromosomes start to pair up with one another, and then they're going to go through crossing over in prophase. In metaphase, again, we are dealing with the middle, all right? So my homies are lining up in the middle of the cell. Those spindle fibers are attached to them. In anaphase, they're being pulled apart, okay? But more importantly, my homies are being pulled apart because you're going to say peace out to your friends first before your family. So my sisters are still hanging out together, but my homies are being pulled apart. Telophase, again, remember that's that ta-da moment. So we have our nuclear membrane starting to come back. Our cell is starting to pinch in the middle. Our spindle fibers are pulling back, and cytokinesis is going to happen. This is our first form or our first stage of meiosis, so meiosis 1. We are ending with 2 haploid cells. So once we start meiosis 2, if you notice, this is our cytokinesis here. Okay, this is when cytokinesis happened, and we're going right into prophase 2. In meiosis 2, I want you guys to write down no interphase. I already said this, but we are making a good reminder for ourselves. So prophase 2, our spindle fibers are coming back. Our chromosomes are getting ready. Our nuclear membrane disappeared. In metaphase, our sister chromatids. So this is more similar to mitosis. Excuse me, not metaphase. I'm trying to write middle. So our sister chromatids are lining up again in the middle. This is like mitosis because we're dealing with just our single X's here and here. In anaphase, they're being pulled apart. Our sisters are being pulled apart. So now we're splitting from our family. Okay, so our sisters are being pulled apart here and here. We no longer have our X's. And finally, we are creating our 4 genetically different cells. So if we look, each one of these cells is slightly different. This has a little red and then a big half red, half yellow. This has a big red, a little half red, half yellow, and so on and so forth. So all 4 of them are genetically different. So again, if we take a look at mitosis versus meiosis, they are extremely different. Mitosis is creating identical body cells. Meiosis is creating genetically different. And we're going to add in here that mitosis creates 2 identical body cells and meiosis creates 4 genetically different. Now, we're focusing on this genetically different part because that's extremely important. And the big reason is so that our babies don't look like each other. I understand we have twins and things like that, but we want them to look different. We want to look different than our brothers and sisters. That would be extremely boring, and if we didn't have that variation. So we want that genetic diversity. Okay, so you might have some babies that look similar within a family. Some might look more like mom or more like dad. Again, it's just how the genetic information combines. Here's just another picture of meiosis. In your book also has this information and just different pictures. If you go online, same thing, you can find all this kind of different pictures to help you, different animations, and I'll post some on Google Classroom as well. Here we have our prophase 2, and if you notice, in meiosis 2, I have 2 cells. Here's a cell, here's a cell. Here's metaphase, metaphase. So I have 2 cells here, 2 cells here. This is how I know I'm in meiosis 2 versus meiosis 1. All right, once you guys have all of this completed, you guys are going to jump to that next page on page 7. And this is your model that you guys have, model 2, haploid versus diploid. I want you guys to use your notes to try to help you determine the answers to this, but you need to pay attention to this part. I am giving you a specific organism. This organism has a diploid number of 24. I highly recommend on your page you write these things down. Diploid equals 2n. Haploid equals n. You can also put haploid equals half. Diploid equals 2 or double. So this is telling me that my diploid, again, you should probably highlight this or circle this, diploid is 24. So if my diploid is 24, I need to figure out what my haploid is, what my 2n, what my n, and using this key over here, it's going to help you answer these questions. If you don't remember what certain things are, like gametes, make sure that you guys take a look in your notes. If you have any questions, please make sure you write down a note on your paper so that you remember to ask me when I come back. Or you can also email me and I can try to get back to you that way as well. If you finish your notes, Model 2, please make sure that your Meiosis Ed puzzle is completed. All right, thanks guys. Have a great day.